I'm really excited about this group and having these three folks together. They're very dynamic, very engaged, very practical, and have a lot of hands-on experience actually bringing these projects to life. And we've been chatting throughout the day, trying to stay responsive to what we're hearing, to the type of questions that you all are raising, and just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of flip the script a little bit. So we're not going to do a traditional panel where we ask questions and answers and hold the Q&A and at the end of the session. I think what I'm going to do is ask these folks to talk a little bit about their background, and then we'd like to engage the audience more intentionally, hearing, especially from extension specialists, what you're hearing, what types of pressing questions you still have about survey producers who have questions. So we're just kind of going to be very organic and flowy, and we want to use this time as widely as possible. So again, I want to recommend we're off the timing and just getting your agenda. We're going to spend 45 to 50 minutes on this, and then cut any discussion a little bit short. So with that, can we take a moment to introduce ourselves? Angie, can you please start?
Sure, I'll just laugh and struggle and go next step up. So I'm Angie Burke with Pivot Energy. I am our Director of Land Stewardship. So in my role, I focus on our basically 100% approach to dual use in agrivoltaics in our sites. So every single ground mount solar array that we install, every single one is qualified. It checks any boxes to have either livestock raising, crop production, or research, soil enhancement, habitat enhancement, work. We double down into that on every single array. Our headquarters is in Denver here, but we have arrays all across the country, spanning everywhere from Hawaii to Colorado to Illinois, New York, Maryland, and more states that we see.
Hello, Ian Burke, Solar Agricultural Services of SolAg. I grew up farming, I started farming as a first generation farmer in 2007. That was after I tried to buy 2 farms before that, lost out on both. So I became a cranberry grower by default. So I bought a wetland, you couldn't put a house on, and that's how I became a cranberry grower, not illustrious, but since I have stayed at family farm, my boys were somewhat interested at 21, and I meant that they stayed interested. But how I got involved with agrivoltaics because I was helping farmers diversify, and conventional solar was part of that. And cutting down trees and putting solar on farmland it didn't sit well with me. The supplying soils being really just land based from solar. So it came at it from that perspective. When Massachusetts came up with the SMART program in 2018, it was a combination of forces, and it's like, let's try to do this in an agrivoltaic way. Agrivoltaics didn't exist, that word. It was just, you wrote problems, so we just experiment with it. So we've been working as a representative, and now as a farmer. I farm under 5 different projects. And the way that our law is, we've actually, I'm not a farmer, I'm a farmer of record. We get into this kind of legalese aspect of making this stuff happen. That's part of this discussion, so we had a conversation. But long and short of it is, we're here today because we've been a bridge between the 2 languages, the 2 entities, farmers and solar developers. And if you can bridge that gap in language and understanding, then we need energy sector resources, i.e. money, electron, with agricultural sector resources, i.e. land and knowledge. You have a little foundation.
Wow, I hate to follow that. That's awesome. My name is Alexis. Sorry for that long intro session this morning, but I work for Hyperion Systems primarily, which is an agrivoltaics developer based in Massachusetts, with mostly products in Western Massachusetts. Commercial farms, a lot of crop production out there. I also do some consulting work on the side, doing a lot of financial modeling, so creating pro formas, much like what Charlie was generous to share, and helping farmers and solar companies figure out how to make agrivoltaic projects work. Those ranging from utility scale cattle grazing applications with few enterprises to small scale 1 acre crop production projects with other systems. So, yeah.
So we can sit, we can stay, we sort of like, can you, if what we want to do here because if we're sitting down, this is a regular panel, it's kind of like there's tables where eye level is my first seat. We're thinking about just kind of making this fun and interactive, so it's worthwhile. So we're happy to do whatever you want. This is your session. Ask questions and to hopefully provide some answers. What would you all
We found a way,
good. Okay. Hey, this is interactive. That's good question. So just I'll do a thought, right? I'm very curious. With Colorado, no pressure. With Colorado being a leader, so many avenues, size, land, productivity, why agrivoltaics have been lacking. Agrivoltaics, you have one of the first rates in the country. Why is it, from your perspective, that this concept has not been embraced as much as in other places?
dealing with Excel energy. And I know some of the other states have better incentives in Colorado for the different programs. But Excel, well, between Excel and other policies as far as getting into a program, there are real obstacles. So how do we deal with Excel?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been working on my project for about 3.5 years now. I don't have Excel to deal with. I have a co-op, which is a lot easier. But still, the difficulties in getting this thing off the ground are huge. Seemed to be at the beginning of it, we had a good idea. We had a community solar project, so that means our intent was to share the benefits with, in my case, about 70 other low and moderate income farmers in our area, farm workers and businesses and nonprofits that were farm related. But 3.5 years later, we still don't have, we haven't broken ground yet, and financing is still up in the air. I think we'll pull it off, but I'm a full-time farmer. I'm running all aspects of my farm myself, other than I hire some of the field work done. And so the extra time and effort it takes to put together a project like this is significant. I don't have the time to serve it on the back. I know pepper varieties really well. I don't know PPAs and interconnection agreements anyhow. Thankfully. But it's another job altogether. It's not one that's easy. And when people ask me, well, would you do it again, or should I start down that path? That's a tough question. I think if we could figure out an easier path to allow those of us who are interested in this sort of thing, and it all makes sense. I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with the fact that it is a great idea to have something like this on open ag land that you can still farm underneath. But the difficulty in pulling it all together is immense. And we need to have policies that will allow folks who have an interest in doing it to actually do it. And it's tough. I think even Excel or co-op, both are really difficult. I think the economics of it and stuff, and the time commitment is a lot more substantial than I expected it to be.
Thank you.
Can I address that a little bit? A suggestion is political, and that is to get your local county officials involved. When I had my contracts with Pivot Energy to do my solar farms on 2 different properties on dry vacant land, as soon as it was ready to go, the county commissioners had a lot of heat from neighbors that didn't like solar farms, And so they said, let's put a hold on any approval of solar farms until we do a study. And I thought, oh, great, here we go. And it turned out good because the people that paid to do the study came back and said, you should allow solar farms on any property in Mason County. And that turned out to be good because they said, look, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for Colorado, it's a win for Mason County, it's a win for the property owner. So for your suggestion, I suggest you talk to your county commissioners or whatever, that they, if they do a study or they look at Mason County's study, they may find that, you know what? Why would we not? Why would we limit a property owner that maybe farms alfalfa or something from having some solar income from it and producing for the community clean, quiet energy?
So, what do you?
So maybe I can return the question on you. So there was a first in Massachusetts, second in Massachusetts. But what was the tipping point made it grow from 1 or 2 to be one of the most active in agrivoltaics in the nation?
So I'll answer that in my perspective. I'd actually like to put Alexis on the spot because she did some research about this. Why did it? This was 2018. Why do we still have only a handful of projects in 2025? So as a farmer that's done and it's new concepts, novel concepts, but there are issues. There are issues with if you have somewhat artificial height requirements of 10 feet in the air and there's 10 feet in the ground, as we talked about, and no one's done that before in our country, and you have a price that you're willing to pay for that, which on paper looks good, but that's not factoring in the time delays of 4 or 5 years, and then construction folks and how you not impact the soil and how you impact soil. There's a lot of moving parts that financiers didn't want to do because you could make enough money outside of agrivoltaics, and the incentive was like you had to be willing to take a risk. Not all developers will win. Fortunately, in Massachusetts, we did have 2 or 3. No, that's it. 2 or 3 solar developers who were willing to take the risk and invest in this, and arguably didn't pan out very well. There's been bankruptcies. There's been everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. So you're welcome to the rest of the country, but we figured it out. Some things, and there are things that absolute lessons learned. Would you like to talk a minute about those lessons learned?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I appreciate the dynamic of this question, like why, where is Colorado, what's holding it back, what can we learn from Massachusetts, what, from the outside looking in, is our nation's leading state in terms of commercial deployment, existing research. The first and was the only financial incentive available on the market. So as Ian said, the SMART program has been active since 2018, and that's a 6 cents per kilowatt adder for all agrivoltaic projects. We learned a lot from that program. It's very fair to hypothesize a relationship between the financial incentive and the amount of deployment we've seen. But there's challenges, and those challenges we've narrowed those down to saying that the liability risk that comes from placing production thresholds. So I have to step back and explain the program a little bit. In order to be eligible for the program, you have to maintain a certain level of crop productivity. So in essence, the farmer's on the hook for producing at the rate that they promised the state. And if that doesn't happen, whether that was due to the solar panels or just a year or 2 wet, too dry, the project's at risk for losing the financial incentive. And as we can imagine, that would collapse the spreadsheet of economics of lose the incentive. So that weight is on the farmer, and the farmer is reticent to partner with the developer is also reticent to partner because they can't find a financier to back them up. And it's created a lot of pointing fingers and hesitance. So that's one key challenge we see in Massachusetts. We're also learning about not mandating certain system requirements, allowing the industry to innovate, allowing farmers more autonomy, thinking about changes over the long the longevity of the system. So there's a lot of lessons learned that we've translated to markets. I know as everyone's in this space thinking about a policy program, that there's opportunity to learn from those existing markets.
Yeah, I think with policy and incentive programs, it can be really beneficial to like jumpstart a market or start a new something, a new innovation. And you have to be really careful about how it's worded, who's on the hook, who's not on the hook, et cetera. And so with that, I'll just reposition, pivot a little bit, is that our approach would really to be not reliant on those like agrivoltaic specific incentive programs, and to really focus on how can we minimally tweak our design and thus minimally change our economics so that we can accommodate these different agrivoltaics configurations at scale. So how do we make this the most repeatable? Because at the end of the day, those smart programs are going away, right? They're not forever like evergreen funding opportunities. They're kind of one and done for a very limited time. So our approach is really, okay, how can we increase row spacing by maybe 6 inches and height by 6 inches? And what possibilities does that open up? How do we stay in the same kind of like steel cost category and not jump up to the next category? How do we kind of push the upper limits of our current financial model and that reality? And what possibilities does that open up?
Yeah, I think it's really fundamental to the conversation, like talking about possibilities. There are all possibilities. Jordan showed us this amazing spectrum of what is technically ideally possible in the world of agrivoltaics. But as many of you might know or have experienced, if you ask the developer what they're willing to do on the property, that's a different conversation that really narrows the window of possibility. I'd love to hear from you three, like, what is this existing realm of possibility now? So how can we temper expectations for our agricultural partners?
Yeah, I think it also goes to this question as well as the previous question, but I think some of the challenges in the state are just that the revenue potential is right now is very, very small here in Colorado compared to what is Massachusetts. In fact, if Jim come on borrowing this, we were talking about in my presentation earlier about different business models and the fact that this Talbot Farm project is behind the meter installation is massively valuable. So if I take the generation, find the price, back into the price of this here. Yeah, so it's directly there. So yeah, there's 5 cents per kilowatt hour for the energy itself, and then the RECs balance out to about 0.375 cents per kilowatt hour. So that adds up to 87.5 cents a kilowatt hour. For reference, if you're going to one of these community solar programs, the way that I set the rates right now, those rates are somewhere between 6 and 7 cents compared to 87.5, which might not sound like a lot, but if you remember, I think all of us felt the impacts of inflation in 2022 and 23 from COVID, a 10% change. So dropping from 87.5 to about 6 to 7 is more like a 25% change. So these are not as revenue heavy of projects, and the projects in Massachusetts that I work on, BIain works on, some of these projects, they're in the right locations and everything, can be selling upwards of, I've seen some as high as 40 cents per kilowatt hour, which is drastic. So part of the problem is just the projects don't have enough revenue to make the economics be as viable here at this point in time right now. That has cascading impacts because then your financiers were looking at how risky your project is, you're looking at how much cash flows you'll have available, aren't willing to give you as much debt as someone might be in Massachusetts, which means you have to put more of your own money up front, and that further delays payback everything from a financial perspective. So it has some cascading impacts there. I do think that I'm not trying to say this is being all bleak. In fact, I'm feeling really hopeful right now because seeing so many producers and esteemed researchers in the room seeing the value of agrivoltaics. I think that if we bring these voices to the table, which haven't been at the table for things like how we set rates and how the Public Utilities Commission reviews rates like this, if farmers start coming to those conversations and saying that the low rates are actually negatively harming us, I think that will have a lot of weight. In fact, I know Austin's done a survey, Austin AgriSolar, a survey that shows that solar developers like me are only trusted by what, 30% or less of farmers, but.
Yeah, they barely beat utilities. There's not, nobody.
Exactly, utilities below, yeah, we're somewhere above nobody, trusting nobody, but the point is, farmers are trusted by something percent of. Exactly, so you all have the credibility, and if we start getting voices like this and understanding amongst the industry about how important it is to make sure that these solar revenues can be not egregious, but at a point where they're more sustainable and not so close to sale date, then these are times where I think we can get over this kind of hump that we have right now, beyond it.
That was well said, and something to think about. I'm gonna come back to the extension quotes here. Just so something to think about is the first question, what do you see as obstacles for your own confidence in agrivoltaics to talk with producers? And so just think about that, and we have experience. Maybe we can help address some of those, if you trust us any more than solar developer. But that could be something we'll come back to.
I just wanted to make a comment about the meetings that have been going on. I've been going to these different workshops and things for a couple of years now. And it's kind of changing a little bit. Originally, it was very snowflake. We didn't have the extension folks talking to farmers, talking to the suppliers. But looking around the group here, we've made comments about, well, the counties don't understand us. The electric companies don't understand us. There aren't any of those people that are being included in these workshops. And having those perspectives up front, I think would really help the overall effort. And in talking to some of the producers, and I won't mention BIain, but one of the things that I've heard from producers that have had monitoring going on from Colorado State, University of Arizona, the information is not getting shared by people or to the producers, to other groups. It's research that's maybe going into a publication, it's sitting on a shelf somewhere. And I really think Charlie is providing big service here, being willing to show some of the nitty gritty that he's looking at. And I think that would really help have the other groups included and to do a little more of ensuring requirements and restrictions.
Thank you for that thought. And I just want to highlight something here, that this is the first time I've been in a room where farmers, producers have been here talking about this. A lot of times it's solar developers, researchers, right? And they're the international. 2 years ago, I was here in helping Denver, right? Jordan did a great job with Alexis orchestrating that. Fantastic event. Very much academic, very few farmers. This is in our backyard in Colorado. So the fact that you're all here, extension, you are farmers by default. So you're kind of like, you relate to farmers in multiple states. You're here, Tim, Charlie. Like this is great. This is what coffee shop talk is, where things happen in the farming community. If you want to make something happen, it's at the coffee shop talk. Right? You're talking about whether you're political beliefs or whatever. There's a social economic impact of solar. And if we talk about farming first, which is what agrivoltaics can be, you can take some off the shelf things, talk about them in a constructive manner, solar, do it in a slightly tweaked way, as we talked about, which is really not more than operating. It's not what you do. It's not the things you do. It's the way you do certain things. And that's what we're talking about, doing things. It's a little bit different.
My question is, you talked about, Alexis, about how the requirement to produce a certain amount of agricultural products was burdensome in Massachusetts, or at least that was my understanding of what you said. So I was wondering if you had ideas for maybe it's policy, but a better framework that would also ensure that agriculture continues to be a priority, but that would be less burdensome. And I think that does relate to what I hear from farmers and ranchers here, which is that pervasive fear that it's not really agrivoltaics, it's just putting up solar array that will take lands out of production. And I don't actually know if there is policy in the state around that. I'm sure people here do, but I don't. So I guess speak to that about what would be a better framework to ensure that agriculture is a priority, but isn't burdensome.
I'll kind of briefly because I feel it's been changed. So I it's really compelling because we're giving mechanism for accountability. That's why we have production thresholds, right? But we can think about it as sort of rather than a punishment for dipping below a threshold, maybe an award for producing at higher rates or producing a minimum viable threshold. So I was thinking about moving in the opposite direction. But I want to hold it. I'm also really curious for being contributing here about this issue. I'll echo that. And I think that ongoing accountability, just the nature of that, so an annual report or check-in or an every 3-year report or check-in to verify that yes, sheep grazing is occurring on site. That like ongoing sniff test feels more important to me than an actual threshold or minimum, maximum, etc. That I think generally as loose or as general as the policy can be, but let's lean on the side of being more strict on the ongoing kind of accountability piece. That is my just like general preference, I think.
Yeah, speaking from firsthand, when you start getting prescriptive on production and you make a policy, very well-intentioned people, local townships, boards, they take that and they put conditions in order of conditions. They put little pieces of information, you must do this, you shall do this. That is really hard to get financed because now investors who are investing in projects are saying, well, is that farmer going to do that? They have no idea. Is 100 bushel a lot or not? Right? So any degree of uncertainty is suspect. Take that. We all know that Mother Nature gives us all kinds of things. So if I lose my crop, Horace, did you farm last year? Did you grow a crop last year? Correct. You lost 100%, but did you farm? How do I know? You didn't get a crop. That's the issue with putting production into a cause. So what we're trying to do, so thank you for asking the question. This is like core stuff. We're trying to do is say, farming is farming. Can we, in a policy, can we have some degree of, if you follow best management practices, was it your fault that you lost the crop that you lost? Are we, there's a fan. Like you can frost protect. If your farm that's been pressed, frost protected, you're applying some degree of nutrients to it. You're doing some degree of pest management. If there's some minimum thresholds that, yes, you're doing this, I would argue that if it stays in current chapter 1 or whatever you call your current agricultural taxation versus commercial or industrial, if you're doing whatever that minimum threshold is, you're good. You're farming. On top of that, if you can have if there is some sort of accountability, which I would strongly encourage any policy to have, an annual report to that assessor or to however you're justifying it, staying in current use taxation, that's the threshold. If you do that, then we're opening up to all of agriculture. This can work really well, especially crops. You see, I can tell you it does. However, for most agriculture, are we going to penalize the wheat producer or the alfalfa producer or let's allow this to happen. If we allow this to happen all, we keep the prescriptive part to a minimum. It'll help.
And building on that too, I think that to the point of the intent of this as well, So I think we lose sight of oftentimes in this, just how much of a positive feedback loop something like this can create. And I know I've been talking all about this today and about to again, but I think that in my eyes, one of the main benefits that agrivoltaics provides is a steady income stream to farmers. It's not dependent on the weather. It is a bankable fixed revenue stream that you receive whether you're leasing your land or if you're owning and using the energy on site like Charlie is at Talbot Farms. And that ultimately can create more money that you can know is there. It's almost like crop insurance without premiums knowing, and you're able to recycle that into your farm. In fact, that case study I showed you today in my presentation with Joe Stokowski Farm in Hadley, he's very transparent. He wouldn't be upset if I told you his number one revenue source for the 5 years before his agrivoltaic project on that site was crop insurance. And he was in the red every single year producing that farm. I'm not going to disclose exactly what our lease rates are, but they were very sizable. And he has that as fixed revenue he can make. And what he's actually done with that is he's gone and invested in soil that he's never had the money to do before. He's cover cropped a lot more. You saw a lot of from year one step of him tilling, but he's been exploring things about what if I were to do no-till or things like that. And these are, I think, things that we lose sight of sometimes when these policies are being created, just what the potential is can be. And if we're here counting our yields as closely as we can and splitting hairs in looking backwards, we're not really able to look forward to the potential that this can bring. I think that one of the financial benefits is one of the biggest aspects really to the farm viability solution that agrivoltaics can bring. And we want to enable that. Like Alexis said, we should be a more carrots approach than a sticks approach, in my opinion.
Can I ask the folks in the audience, as farmers extension academics, are you looking to the future next year, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, just in general? Fall. Okay. Fine. Okay. And so,
what's your life? If life was the city, you live in 25 years.
okay. What's the lifespan of solar? Yeah. So you're making a decision when it comes down to conditioning projects. If you're thinking like generation, you're thinking about your soil, what you're inputting into this land. If you're extractive, so conventional solar has reputation sometimes to be extractive, nothing against it, but it's looking at electron generation now, what can we do, how can we make it the cheapest possible today? Farmers can generation within 25-year increments, right? I have corn blocks who are 100 years old. I'm still stewarding them. So if you think long term, you think regenerative, you regenerate family, it's succession planning. This fits really well into that dynamic. You change it. Thank you, Charlie, for those numbers, because even the most staunch conservative farmer that says I despise solar and want nothing to do with it has to look at these numbers and at least acknowledge that they are a vehicle for farm viability. They are a vehicle for succession planning, for passing on that farm to another generation while still farming. So the grandfather and grandmother are not blowing on their graves thinking, wow, you just abandoned that person. That's an opportunity to think through. And when you think about as an academic researcher, it is a discussion not of 3 to 5. Yes, 3, but it's not next year. You're thinking decades.
Yeah, I beat this drum all the time. Within Pivot, I'm always encouraging our engineers and our financial modeling team, let's not trip over a dollar to pick up a dime. Let's invest properly, thoughtfully up front. And ultimately, we can save on those operations costs for really up to 40 years is what we tend to model. So let's do those investments up front. Think about an extra 6 inches of height or spacing between the rows. And we're going to save tenfold that in the long run.
So, just because we started talking about time and planning, so extension is about planning, right? And extension tends to be a little bit behind research, right? And what we're kind of leaving in extension right now is there's a building body of research, and there's also a building body of sales pitches. We need to start having a bridge, and that's actually those actionable things. So stuff like this, the budgets, the fact sheets that they're making. But what it sounds like to me is we're actually on what I consider a normal extension timeline. The fact that we're starting to build those things now. We've only had these installations in the ground for a short amount of time. Extension needs at least 2 to 3 years of actual data in our locality to feel comfortable to start providing that information. That's why extension is so trusted. And that's also probably why you're seeing a bit of a delay. So we'll have those individual private conversations right now with producers that are interested, but we're not going to have like mass rollouts and start doing workshops and things like that on agrivoltaics probably until 2-3 years from now. Because that's when we have the information and confidence to actually be able to do this. And honestly, I'm very excited to see how much is like coming through extension right now. Because like I didn't really hear much about agrivoltaics until like 2 years ago, and it's all because I talk horse all the time.
I'd like to make a comment about this same thing. Thank you. And that is that this is part of the solution is politics. And like I said, with Mesa County, I didn't understand at first when they said, we're going to stop all approvals of solar farms that was do a study. And it turned out to be a blessing because they did one. So anybody that's trying to talk their local politicians like commissioners meetings or something like that is get a copy of the study that was done for Mesa County political people that and show your political people this that this has been done. Look at this study, look at what they recommended, why did they do it? And it's kind of a tool to say, let's prove it for everybody, for all farmers, no matter what kind. And again, I'd like to say thank you to you guys for the experiment you're doing out here. The numbers are going to be very important, and what Talbot Farms are being so generous to share with us about theirs, because once it works for a couple of people, then everybody starts to say, hey, I want that too. So there you go.
Let me tack on and just continue to shout out Mesa County specifically. So there was actually a return moratorium on solar. Let's press pause. We need to do a full revisit here. But since then, Mesa has come out and their solar policy is essentially if you can prove and demonstrate that you're doing agrivoltaics, you have a use by right. So that means that we as a solar developer and owner don't have to go through a 6, 10, 12 question mark number of months worth of a process to get a permit. We have that use by right. So we don't have to do that special use permit process kind of the typical way. So that's super helpful and really encourages not just that energy production locally, but also that continued ag production on your parcels. And then I'll also shout out Weld County over on the Front Range has a really strong solar policy as well. And it's very clear, very easy to follow, very easy to understand. Am I under 50 acres or over 50 acres? Here's the policy I follow. Weld County is very much an all of the above energy producing county. And I think their policy and their commissioners specifically really stand that as well.
Yeah, I want to circle back to the point that here is really important in terms of how do we build trust long term, how do we, align what seems to be an accelerated deployment timeline with research timelines and what takes about community trust. I guess I would defer a question back to the audience, and I want to connect some dots in terms of. So that here, I said that there's an appetite from producers wanting to engage with solar and agrivoltaics. We're hearing that there's political and technical challenges with utilities, navigating technical and financial aspects, but there's a gap on perhaps service providers. So if producers want this, but there's that gap, what type of, so from an extension perspective, what type of research would help mediate those gaps? Or what types of resources would help you serve producers where the system is at today? Honestly, your case studies are really helpful. So one of the things that I know a lot of our projects do is collect economic data. So having enterprise budgets, honestly, estimations on effort like how much time is going to go into some of these things. And then case studies are really, really good. And one of the things we do before we have like fact sheets and things like that built is put people who are interested in contact with people who've done it. Extension, our job is mostly about connecting, right? So what we do is like, if I didn't know something, I would reach out first, and first would help me get in contact with the producer who had that experience. Sometimes in the beginning, we'll rely on that kind of interpersonal connection. And then give us about 3 more years and we'll have like a fact sheet you can send you by email. And we've still probably connecting with someone who's done it. Because the example of how to do it is sometimes better than a static fact sheet that, while it's really awesome and easy to email it, doesn't always cover all of these nuances. Because our fact sheets tend to be made on a statewide basis, and a lot of these specific problems are very county-based. So sometimes you'll have like addendums and bulletins and stuff, but like we're going to universities. Sometimes it takes us almost a year to get one of these fact sheets peer reviewed. So we do a lot of just connecting.
One thing that comes to my mind, where we are right now, the incentives for back of the meter projects for that, my project, back of the meter, that exists pretty much for any agricultural producer right now. We have to demonstrate a use, and it's non-residential. Our farm worker housing, our farm residences are ineligible. So it's irrigation pumps, it's back-end houses, coolers. So we're living where we really see, and I hope one day to see viability in agrivoltaics. It has to be front of the meter. It has to be what we're producing, and it has to be viable, and it has to be done without weeding plants. And when that day comes, it will be a total game changer for specialty crop producers anywhere.
Charles, we use all the electricity. We expect to use all the electricity produced.
It's a net meter. So yes, besides year-round production, that is year-round use. Now my production during my peak use, I'm not going to be producing too much of that use. During the spring, winter, all winter, spring months, I'll be producing more than I use.
Charlie, comment, the previous last comment, has to make sense ultimately for a front-of-the-meter project. Our proposed project is just shy of 3 megawatts. We could serve somewhere between 5 and 600 homes. And in 2023, Excel had their last RFP for community solar gardens. And so we bid into that. And they scored the projects not based on community value or any benefits other than the strict cost of energy to Excel. So of all of the projects that bid into it, they started at the bottom of the bids, the lowest cost of energy to Excel. We based our bid on, obviously, as we've talked, agrivoltaics cost more than a brownfield site or just a straight solar project. And we based our economics and projections on working with Byron Cohen at AgriSolar, what he experienced bidding into the RFP that he was successful in Excel, where today, talking specifically about rec pricing, Jack Solar Garden is getting about $60 a rec or better for their project. We bid in at somewhere around $40 to $45 a rec. And our project could potentially produce about 5,000 recs per year. The difference between, and so the outcome of the RFP was Excel and accepted the projects and their final bid or rent pricing that they're willing to pay was a negative $34 a rent. So the difference between what they used to pay at about $60 a rent versus negative 34, that's almost $100 a rent. 500 or 5,000 rents a year are the difference between income potential between what could have been and what is about 500,000 a year. So I wrote a letter to Mike Plant, one of the county, the public utilities commissioners, explaining to him, how unfair I thought it was that Excel, which is our only avenue to the grid, we were having to compete based on just strictly the price of energy with no community benefits considered. Mike wrote back, I agree with you, I feel for you, but to change policy is about a 4 to 5 year process. So how do we get the county commission, not the county commissioners, because it's way above their pay grade, but the Public Utilities Commission and Excel to sit down with us and talk about what the future looks like for, when we're losing how many millions of acres of cropland, Austin, 20-something million acres a year, most of it urban sprawl, but a lot of it to what has been solar development. How do we get the decision makers in the policies that we have to deal with? How do we get them involved in our discussions?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have to comment on that.
Getting them to the table, that's a tough proposition, I think. And I think there's another tactic to take, which is to just remove them from the conversation. So rather than selling the renewable energy credits to the utility and assuming that has to be the solution, sell those renewable energy credits to a corporate off-taker instead. And so you're selling the energy to the utility at that wholesale rate, which is tough, but there are plenty of corporates out there that are ready and willing to pay those premiums, or that now it's a premium in Excel territory, but they're willing to pay that more so market rate for those energy credits. And so if you can use that tactic potentially as a shorter term solution, I think that's a different path and a different tactic to take.
In Colorado, they're available?
Yeah, so like Pivot Energy does have this, and like utility scale projects will have this structure sometimes as well, where like that you're a qualified facility, so you get that wholesale rate from the utility because they have to pay that to you regardless. And then that rec, you don't have to sell it to Excel when you're a qualified facility. You can sell that to any other entity. So in Colorado, for instance, you could partner with like a CSU or a Coors Brewery or another like large energy consumer and can sell those renewable energy attributes to them.
What's the qualified facility?
Yeah, correct. Oh, a qualified facility, it just means that you're not in the community solar program specifically. You are just a solar facility that interconnects to the grid per A through Z criteria, and you're selling that energy wholesale rate to the utility.
So that's something that Rick could do. So we're bidding against the other developers that are going into that same solar. And the pricing.
Oh, for a qualified facility, you all get the same rate no matter what.
Which is what, 4 or 5 cents?
Yeah.
But you get the credits also.
Yeah, the way a qualified facility works is that instead of getting a contract though for 20 years or something like that, I think like they would do with something like community solar in the program, it's going to fluctuate every year. So it could go down where it is, it could go up, which can make it harder for financing. A company that's larger, like Pivot, that has a lot more capital, it can justify going through that, doing more portfolio level financing and smoothing things out. So it's harder from the individual project, but it's a very creative thought of like, just depends which program you're in and if finding the right buyer, the right investor for those credits. Yeah.
So I wrap up on thoughts. Most everyone here has a smaller project. The impact of those smaller projects is not what we're losing on farm and solar. It's utility, it's community, but mostly utility scale. And as Angie said, can we get off the shelf projects, off the shelf infrastructure, solar infrastructure, and just do a few things, and this is where extensions, we might not, and we don't know, we're not gonna like to about 5 to 10 years, really. Do crops grow? Yes, they do. The question is, how well do they grow, and what are the economics? And that's where extension, rightly so, is going to be used as a resource for the future. Farmers will say, how do you think growing peanuts this way versus that way? And it's research study. But we're going to start somewhere. And where is the farmland now? So, from my opinion, is if the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, National Farm Bureau, if farmers are saying, hey, we're recognizing that we got to do something. We don't want to be beholden to soy prices and tariffs, all this stuff happening. We recognize electrons are generating money. We're losing farmland. What is the combination here? If we flag those things, we have the resources. NREL, which is now NLR. So NLR, we have in this state, extension in this state, with BIain in this state, right? So there are resources here. There are resources we can rely upon Alexis for other research. Other states are doing this without a specific policy. They are. So the challenge to you all is, what is Colorado? Can you also do it without a policy that specifically said we're going to pay this much? And if that's just getting utility to get out of their own way, no offense. But if that's it, then political pressure can be yielded to say, just look at things differently.
And my closing thought is, we haven't heard it too much today, but there's a rhetoric amongst agrivoltaics and the solar industry in general about agrivoltaics costs more. And the big question I have is, costs more than what? Does it cost more than conventional solar when you just look at those two solar projects combined? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't even cost more, but sometimes, and I'd say more by a little bit, it does cost more. But even when you and I were having this conversation this morning or our morning coffee, from a systems level perspective though, is it really costing more? Do you need to value the water savings? Do you need to value the community benefits? You need to value these things that come outside of the framework of just the solar economics, and we really have to apply these systems level thinking. So that's one thing as well. Does it cost more in aggregate from a systems level, but also from other alternatives? You know, we're a state that is still very heavily dependent on coal power in our mix right now. Is agrivoltaics more expensive than coal power right now? And I think the answer most of the time is no. And maybe this can still be a way to reduce rates for ratepayers while producing community benefits, while producing water savings, and while producing a farm viability tool as well. So I think that these are the types of mindsets that people like Marie are inspiring me to think like, and I think that we need to be able to bring into these conversations, whether we're having them with the Public Utilities Commission or with whoever we're involved in extension, and we all have to kind of put our heads together and start beginning to think a little bit outside of our expertise, and being able to collaborate with people a bit outside of our expertise. And I admittedly don't have all the solutions. I think there's more creative people than me. It's very abundant to find me, right? To just point out all the problems and then just give the mic away, but no solutions. But I do think that there is some opportunity there. And I think that we really do need to consider this from a systems perspective as well when we're talking about costs and economics. Truly economics, not finance, isn't the nuance between that.
Thank you all. Thanks everyone for being really engaged. We're gonna take a break, 8-minute break, and come back at 3 o'clock. We're gonna spend about 20-25 minutes doing an interactive exercise. We're gonna break into 2 groups. One of the groups is gonna go in the kitchen, one's gonna stand here. You're gonna choose where you wanna go. In the kitchen, we're gonna be talking about solar leasing, and we're gonna be showing you like a sketch of a fact sheet that Extension intends to publish as a result of this project. And we're just wanting some live feedback. 20 minutes, really open, organic discussion, get some input. We're going in the right direction. What else can we be including in this resource for producers? In this room, we're going to be talking about case studies. So, 3 to 5 sites across Colorado, with some technical specifications and economics. We want to make sure that resource is going in the right direction as well. So again, if you want to talk about solar leasing, go in the kitchen. Case studies will be here at 3 o'clock in 20 minutes, just to